Hello and welcome to Everything's Fine Probably. This week's episode is building on some of the topics we've been talking about really since we started the podcast back in May, around the concepts of community and well-being. It was in our episode on Men's Mental Health Week where we spoke to Dan from Where the Viking. I first told the story about a friend of mine, a Crystal Palace fan. I'd not seen him for about 10 years or so, but I had a spare ticket for the Harlequins Falcons game at the Stoop. And because he's based in London, I gave him a shout. He came along, met us at the Cabbage Patch. And while we were on our way to the ground, he mentioned that new football season had started. And I asked him, just out of interest, not to be unpleasant, what, as someone who supported a mid-table Premiership team who traditionally don't win much, not relegation threatened, not likely to qualify for Europe, although obviously they did all that last season, that's made me look a bit silly. But what I really wanted to know is what was he excited about heading into a new season. Now, don't recall the exact words he said, but the crux of it is it's good for his mental health. And that's as good a reason to do anything, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So that sort of seeded this idea in my head. And when I mentioned this in the podcast with Dan, he talked about how for a lot of men, when we're young, we play sports or we support sports teams. And then as we get older, certainly, your playing days come to an end and you lose a chunk of your community. And actually, even if you're supporting, you move into different life stages. It's harder to keep that going sometimes. If you've got a young family and so on. So we can lose that sense of community and the well-being that comes with it. That also came up a little bit when we were talking to Tom from Bamboo Mental Health a couple of weeks ago about the importance of community. And last week when we talked about why hobbies are so good for us. So all of that has prompted this episode, which is all about the community that comes from following sports teams. And in that spirit of community, I've gone to my sports community, which is Harlequins Rugby Football Club. So our guests today are fans of Harlequins, not to suggest that there's anything unique maybe about what Quins do. I think the things we're going to be talking about are fairly typical to quite a lot of sports clubs and actually to most communities, whether that's around sports or hobbies or whatever you do, really. So the people we'll talk to today are people who have taken that sense of community on another step. And we're going to explore a little bit about why that is and what they get from it. So earlier today, I spoke to Michael Woods. Had to be earlier today because he's in Australia. He and his cousin run a podcast, or have been running a podcast, for Quins fans called 2 Woods and 4 Quarters for the last few seasons. So let's have a listen, first of all, to what Michael had to say. Great morning, Michael. Thanks for joining us from the other side of the world.
No worries.
So tell me, as a starting point, how does the whole Harlequins fan journey start for you?
So Will and I, of my podcast co-host, our grandfather played for Quins post-war, 1952 to 1959. So growing up in Brighton, the south coast, they were our closest team. I used to play rugby at Lewis Rugby Club when I was started at 6, 7 years old, and we would go and play in these. They used to be called the curtain raiser cups. They'd be on the sort of back pitch behind the stoop where there's now a little playground and there's a sort of 4G football pitch now. But we started there, going up sort of once a year when we were 7 or 8, going to watch Quins, and it's been in my family as long as I can ever remember. And then in 2017, I moved to university in Twickenham at St Mary's, and I'd spent 18 months mucking around in Australia on a gap year, playing hockey, growing my hair long, having too many beers. And I wasn't really thinking about further education that much. And one of the only really sort of driving factors of why I chose university was because I knew that Quins was down the road. So I thought, I'll get to go and watch them a bit and there'll be a degree in it as well. So that was nice.
So Quins, I love Quins, supported Quins for many, many years. We don't win a lot, unfortunately. But... no one can accuse us of being glory hunters or anything like that. What is it do you think keeps people going? 'Cause it's such a well-supported club. Why do you think it is that keeps drawing people back?
I don't really remember the 2012 win. It was a bit sort of pre my real time of nosing on rugby and understanding things. And then we won it in 2021, and it became a bit of a whirlwind sort of 6 months for us. But in terms of just sort of regularly going back, I first started going on my own in 2017. I had a season ticket in the South Stand on my own. And then in my second year, I moved in with a couple of mates who weren't big rugby fans, but were in and around it. And then it became something that we did together. And then in 2021, we won it. And the online community of Quins really sort of went through the roof a little bit. You know, we started a podcast. Quins have really ramped up their social stuff, you know, really sort of breaching out and making sure that people felt connected when you couldn't actually go and watch. And then by the time we all got back ground, we'd all sort of, and this is especially sort of personal to me and Will, we'd all made these connections online, people that listened and people that had reached out to us. And you wanted to go and see these people that weren't on an Instagram icon on your phone. You wanted to go and speak to them. You wanted to go and be around it. And then, you know, and then we started going on these European trips, which was just the most fun you could ever have. And, you know, I've now got a WhatsApp group with 6 mates, 2 brothers, a friend, another friend, me and Will, who are 2 cousins. And it's the most relentless WhatsApp group in the entire world. But it's not just rugby; it's all manner of things, and it's people you go and share a common interest with, and we all miss that during lockdown and during COVID.
Oh, we did.
And I don't know what it is specifically about Quins. It's never something I've been able to put my finger on the button with. But I don't know, it's a little bit like supporting Brighton Hove Albion for me. You started at 1 when you came walking out the womb, and you can't ever take that carpet away from someone's feet, you know, under their feet. It's in you. And once you start, you cannot stop. And because of the way they are and because of how they play and because of the players we have and the supporters we have and the ground we have, it's so intangible, a love that you have for something like that. And it's impossible to explain for people who don't have it.
No, it really isn't. There's nothing quite like a match day at the Stoop for me. I just love.
Yeah. And they've really sort of branched out on the match day stuff. You know, when we started doing big games at Twickenham, it became more than just Harlequins fans. They were the first club to really make rugby into an event. And I was at university in Twickenham, and big game was always my favourite day of the year. It was better than Christmas. It was better than birthdays because I'd have all my mates from uni who had lived in the area. And obviously, you know, there's the England games going on in the Six Nations period and the autumn period. And all these guys would go off to university, go off home, sorry, after uni for Christmas.
Mm.
And then they'd all descend back on Twickenham for a day or so because there was this enormous event going on. And suddenly it wasn't just about Quins, it was about rugby. But it's funny when I go to take people to Twickenham to watch Quins, or have done in the past, and you know, it's a great day and the streets are lined and you go out for beers after, all that sort of stuff. But I do struggle a bit during the games where I'm sort of thinking, right, I can't speak to you now for 80 minutes because this is the bit that is most important.
That's how you watch it. You're just totally engrossed in the game.
It depends who I'm with. If I'm with the guys that I sat in the South Stand with for the last 3 or 4 years, then I think we're all a bit like that. And if I go with my dad, he's a very astute watcher, so I'm okay with going with my dad. But if I'm going with mates who I'm taking for the first time, or you know, people who I'm trying to show what it means to me and what the day means and the club means and the people around it means, I'm not great. I sort of go, right, you know, you're in your seat, you've got yourself a drink, you've got yourself a bag of chips, that's fine. But for the next 40 minutes, I won't speak to you. Then you get me for 15 minutes, and then you get me for, you know, as long as you want afterwards. But during it, yeah, it's not an easy watch. It never is.
No, and that's the thing with Quinton. It's never an easy watch,
No.
because it's always tight, it's always tense. But hey, you know, part of the fun.
It was so incredible being in that Prem final ground with only 10,000 people there. Some of my best mates, and you know, the one thing that made it the most special is that Will and I, as cousins, grew up in sort of separate parts of the country. We were down on the south coast in Brighton. He was in Tring in Hertfordshire, and we were quite similar in age. We'd always go on. We see each other when we were growing up when we were younger. We'd get on at Christmases, and you know, we both sort of moved to London at similar times. But the one thing that the podcast did was it gave me a new best friend. He's not just my cousin anymore. He's my best mate, and you know, going to Paris, Montpellier, Bordeaux, Toulouse, Gloucester, Twickenham, Bath, you know, all the places like, you know, London Irish, all those places, and doing it with him has just been the most fun I think we can ever have asked for. And the people you meet along the way and the mates you make, and yeah, that's been I think the most enjoyable thing out of the whole lot is not just watching Quins, but doing it with what is now one of my best mates, even though he's my cousin. It's been so much fun.
Fabulous. So let's talk about the pod a little bit more. So that came out during COVID. You're
Yeah,
both bored, like so many of us were. But how did it all happen, and how did it grow in the way it did?
I think I think the reason it grew in the way it did, and firstly, I mean, Will must take probably 95% of the credit for all of it. He's the brains. He knows how things work. He does all the social stuff. He works in social media. So
Okay.
we had a bit of a social media presence before we started putting episodes out. And then we got a bit lucky. We had agreed to do a podcast. We thought, yeah, you know what, let's give it a crack. If not listen to it, who cares? And I think the day, or maybe you know what, it may have even been the morning that we were going to record our first episode. Paul Gust had left, so we had an episode out 8 hours after, and then we just got lucky at the right time. We started an episode when the coach left. There was a bit of controversy around it. There was a little bit of bad feeling around the group, and then we, well, the team and the club got on this roll
Mm.
on both programs. The men's and the women's both went to go on and be Premiership winners, and we had sort of followed that path so closely up until the last day of the season, and yeah, we got a bit lucky in that first couple of weeks because people wanted to talk about it. People wanted to sit in the pub with their mates in the patch wherever and think, well, what are we going to do if Gustard goes? Who are we going to get in? How's this going to operate? And I think we filled that gap for a lot of people with wanting to discuss their team, wanting to discuss their club, and you know being on text is fine, but it's a slower form of communication, even with WhatsApp groups and how many, how quickly you can get information from people. But sitting down and having two people have a conversation with energy and with passion for the topic, especially in sport, because like I say, there's, you know, supporting a club has an energy and a passion you can't quite explain to other people if you don't have the same thing. And I just think we got a bit lucky with the timing, and then we filled a void that people needed for the time that it was happening. And yeah, it sort of went from one strength to another. We were busy on, you know, DMing people and trying to get people on and finding a name that would draw people maybe outside of Quins. And the club were brilliant and they were so helpful getting players on. We had guys like Lewis Liner on in our first year, Chris Robshaw, and yeah, a little bit of luck, but also just I think the energy and the passion that we had for the topic made it so much more enjoyable for people to listen to.
So, you move all the way to the other side of the world, and yet you're still actively part of the Quins community.
Mm.
So, what is it that gets you up at all these stupid times of the day and night to watch the games and to record the podcast and keep all that connection going?
I mean, I think it's an obligation that I had to Will at the start of it. I moved out here for a multitude of reasons. London had sort of kicked me to the curb a little bit with just the cost of living and teacher salaries and all that other stuff. But I moved out here just for a challenge to myself in a place that I knew I'd have opportunity. But genuinely, one of the toughest things about leaving was leaving going to the Stoop because I'm going to so much AFL here. I'm going to lots of rugby league. I'm really throwing myself into it. The cricket's awesome, but I haven't got the same real deep rooted connection to a club here as I do back home. But what I think I enjoy about it is that people here feel the same about their sport as I do about mine, and I'd be getting. I mean, last night I was up till 2:15 with a couple of mates watching England win that Test match at Lords, and I've done some stupid forms of travel over my life, early hours in the morning, late hours of the night, coming to and from matches of all sport. But with Quins, it's different. I make sure that I'm back home in time for kickoff. I make sure that I'm connected to it. I make sure that I'm talking to my mates because they're some of the best mates I've got in the world, and it's the common thread. But yeah, it's been a bit more tricky, paying more for subscription fees and finding weird ways of getting around VPNs and watching European code weekends where the screens and the broadcasting stuff is rubbish. But yeah, and
And as well as rugby, I mean, you're a keen cricket fan.
yeah.
Um, is it the same things that attract you, think, to cricket and to hockey, as it is to rugby?
Um, Hockey not so much. Hockey was something that hockey's not a huge market. It translates terribly to TV. But I played a really good level of hockey before COVID. Never quite bounced back. But I grew up as a Brighton Hove Albion fan with my dad, and
Hmm.
you know my dad has been he was born by the sea in Brighton. He'll live by the sea in Brighton. He'll die by the sea in Brighton. You know, he bleeds like blue and white stripes is his entire lifeblood. And you know, we've been to some horrible places across the country on Tuesday nights in League One and League Two, and then we got into the Championship. I was at the League One player final in 2005 when Leon Knight scored an 81st minute penalty, and I was 8 years old. And then we got into the Championship, and then we got this new stadium, and then we got into the Premier League. You think, oh my God, like this is it. We're in the Premier League, and then we got into Europe of all things. And actually, this is a little bit of a sad story, but the night that Brighton first played in Europe against Athens was the 23rd of September 2023, and I had raced down from work from London. My brother was in Leeds, so he was sort of taken a half day and had come down, and me, my dad, and my brother were sat in the West Stand at the Amex watching our team play in Europe, and we lost the game 3-2. Came out the ground, got back to the car. We stopped at this little roadside place for a pizza before we had to get back get back on the train first thing in the morning to get back to work. And we got a phone call from my grandpa who'd had to take my grandma into hospital, and she actually died that night at about 3-4 in the morning. And it's a weird way of looking at it, but had my team not been playing in Europe on a random Thursday night in September, Brighton never played a Thursday night. They play Saturday, they might play a midweek cup, but they never played a Thursday night. But had they not, my dad and my brother and me hadn't have been 10 minutes away from the hospital and had the opportunity to say goodbye to my grandma. You know, and it's a weird thing because my sister wasn't there. She's not a football fan, but it's something I can never put a price on. You know, supporting Brighton my whole life. If it was only for that moment that I got to say goodbye to my lovely grandma, it was worth it in that moment. You know, if we never win an FA Cup, if we never win a League Cup, if we never win an anything else, it will be worth it for that moment. And it's a weird way of looking at it. You know, we wrote an email to Roberto De Zerbi the week after, thanking him, this mad Italian manager that we had, because had he not taken Brighton from a mid-table side, which we were all incredibly happy with, we got into Europe, we played on a Thursday night, and I got to say goodbye to my grandma. And it's such a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, how fates align? I think it's an odd thing in sports supporting when you talk to a lot of sports fans, is a lot of the stuff they talk about isn't so much about the winning and losing. Yeah, some of that, of course there is. But it's all that other stuff.
Absolutely.
People really talk about the memories, the friends, the family, the camaraderie. And that's more than anything. For me, that's when I think back through all the years I've been going to football and rugby and cricket. Yeah, I can remember those results. I remember some of those special moments. But more than anything else, it's about the people I'm with.
Yeah. I don't remember a single minute of the game. Brighton beat Bristol City in the League One player final. I was 8 years old. I remember seeing Leon Knight score a penalty in the 81st minute. I don't remember a single other thing about the game. But I remember being in the car on the way back from Cardiff with my dad. I remember that. You know, it's stuff like that. It absolutely is. And it's such a bizarre world. And there's the famous comedian, actually, Reece James, who was on Mock the Week a lot, is a mad Spurs fan. And before the Europa League final, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, he actually released like an extract from his book about what it meant to be for him to be a Spurs fan. And he told this story about his dad buying him a little box with a season ticket in, and what that meant. And he went on this, you know, big elaborate, you know, story about Spurs and his family and this and that and else. But actually, what his dad bought him for Christmas wasn't just a little box with a season ticket in. It was a box of hope. And that's what it is to be a sports fan. You always hope that one day your team is going to win something. You know, Harlequins are never going to have the storied history of Manchester United in the 2000s. We're never going to have the European success of, you know, the Leicester team of the ages in rugby, or that Saracens team and all that went there. We're never going to have that. But you think you might have a portion of it. You might have that one day. And you know, I hate Crystal Palace as much as the next Brighton fan, but actually watching those Crystal Palace fans lift an FA Cup, it cut me to my soul. But you know what they've been through. You know what's led them to that moment. And when Quins won the Premiership in 2021, I remember it in 2012. I remember all the players. I remember some of the stories. But being on that journey towards it with my cousin through the podcast, through the people that we met, no one can ever take that away from me. Whether it was 10,000 people, whether it was 5 people, whether it was 80,000 people in the ground, that's a day that I will live. I remember as long as I have breath in my body because of what it meant to get there. It wasn't just about winning at the end of the 80 minutes. It's what led us there. Who you did it with. I've got some of the best photos in the world of me and Will in arms in the stadium, crying, celebrating, relief, joy, panic, all of it. You can never ever take those memories away from people.
No, it's such a heightened state of emotion, isn't it? It just stays
Yeah.
with you.
And people talk about men's mental health and people being closed books and not speaking enough. You want to see a group of 20,000 people, letting out their emotions. Go and stand on any terrace in any sports ground anywhere in the country at 3 o'clock on a Saturday and watch people be emotional. Watch people have an outlet for their emotions. It's watch them talk to their mates about things they wouldn't talk to about if they were on the phone on a Tuesday night on the way back from work. It's what you share with people. It's the journey you go on. It's the highest of highs that you get to experience with the people, and it's being at the bottom of that arc, thinking, well, one day it might get better. One day we might do this. One day we might, win. I'm living in Australia at the minute, and St Kilda are a massive AFL club, and I walk around the city, and I see people wearing St Kilda jumpers with a tagline on it that says "Just once before I die." That's all they want. They just want to win it once before they die, and that'd be enough. They don't want 10 years of storied success. They don't want 15 years at the top, eternal glory. They just want to see their team win it once, and that would be enough.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, awesome. Well, thanks ever so much for doing this. Do appreciate,
no worries.
Appreciate your time, and
it's an easy topic for me to talk about this.
Yeah, I kind of sense you could do lots more of it. Yeah, well, perfect. I'll miss the pod, so thank you for the years you've done it.
No worries, mate. It's been great. It's been awesome.
Two Woods, Six Nations, maybe. How about that?
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I mean, the Six Nations is always harder. It's on a weird times, but I'd be surprised if we didn't dip in and out once every 6-7 weeks. But we'll see. We'll have to see what brings. But no, we'll keep pumping the line stuff. Will Lancey on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to seeing him, and we'll have a nice sort of 10 days together, which would be cool.
Fantastic. We have a great time. Really hope
we'll
see that 3-0 we're all hoping for. And,
well, I almost hope it's 2-1. I hope they lose in Brisbane because I'm not going, and then we get this big finish for 2-1. So
yeah, there's something great about having that last test. It all rests on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like if we don't 3-0 them, it's going to feel a bit disappointing.
If we go to Sydney and it's 2-0 already, 3-0 might feel a bit token. I almost hope it's 1-1 going down the last, and we win in Melbourne and Sydney because those are the two that I'm going to.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure everyone's having a great time.
And I hope we win the Ashes 3-2, having lost the first two, and then we win at Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney, because that means I'll be there for those as well. So
fair enough. I'll bear that in mind. Go 2 down. I'll spare that thought for you anyway. So, thought that was interesting stuff. I'm joined by Stu and Shelley, as always. Stu is a sports fan, supporting Arsenal and Quins, and Shelley has no interest whatsoever in sport, but is quite interested in well-being and mental health. You both good?
All good, thank you. Yeah, just getting over that exciting last couple of days in the cricket. I don't know if you watched that. Yeah, so we'll sort of move on to that shortly.
Well, there was cricket on as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, Shelley, it's been quite the summer of sport.
Yeah.
I was just in the garden. I've just been out. I read a whole book.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good.
Fantastic. Get a book recommendation off you later. I would now like to bring in our second guest for today, Mr. Will Humphrey. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Jim. It's a real pleasure.
Will, there's a couple of things. So, as well as a Harlequins fan and ardent supporter, you are also part of the Harlequins Supporters Association, QUINSSA.
Yes, I am on the committee for QUINSSA, which is very much Quins Supporters Association. I know, such great marketing. That such a great name.
It sort of works, doesn't it?
Been working. Goodness, I've been on the committee now for must be coming up to about 3 or 4 years. Some great stuff there. Obviously, you really kind of get more entrenched, really get part of the vibrancy of such a great community like for working for Harlequins. It's really good.
Fantastic. So how does this whole Harlequins fan journey start for you?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. So, I'm born and raised in Sutton, southwest London, probably about 4 or 5 miles maybe away from Twickenham. For many years, it was growing up in that sort of part of London. Obviously football's more king and stuff, so I'll be playing football and stuff. But then I wanted to go to a football club. I wanted to actually be part of a football team. My dad decided, actually, I think at the time he was getting a bit lethargic with football. He'd been born and raised in Watford. Obviously, I suppose the late 90s wasn't a good time to be a Watford fan, but I think as well he'd been maybe kind of taken off by the fact it wasn't such a family-friendly event. So what he did was that he just said to me, "All right, well, we could do football, but actually maybe if you start rugby first, see how that goes, and see where it goes from there." And as they famously say, that is where the cookie crumbles. That's where it all started. I mean, I started playing at my local rugby club, Sutton Epsom. Did it for a year, wasn't quite into it, but then missed it, then came back, so then played to 18. Then I went to the University of Portsmouth. I played a little bit there, not as much as I did, but I was more interested, I think, hitting all the student nights and stuff like that. But yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, exactly. Had a great time there. And then I came back. But what it was for me, when it comes to Harlequins, I really got into Harlequins. I've been on and off, and obviously I've been supporting them. And but I wasn't really too into them. I was kind of more focused on my own sort of rugby with Sutton Epsom. But it was in my first year at university. When you've left home, it's the first time you've left home, you're 18. Yeah, so we're talking September, October 2011. And this was around about the time when Harlequins started off their famous historical run, which actually culminated with them winning the first ever league title in 2012. And I think what it was is I just kept hearing about how good Harlequins was, and I thought I'd take a little bit more of an interest, because obviously that's something that I associate with home, obviously feeling a bit lonely, missing your family, this and that. And it was from there, it really kind of ramped up my sort of love for the club. And it really came a thing where I basically I went from being a fan to an ultra, as I say it. I got absolutely obsessed with it. And it was because of that I really kind of got to the point where I am now. I mean, like I said, I'm a committee member on the Supporters Association. I've been doing that for a few years. I got noticed because of that, because I was, during COVID, I was working on a little private Facebook group where we managed to exponentially grow. And yeah, it's really from that. And obviously the sort of like the butterfly since then, obviously the friends I've made, I've made so many good friends. People I really call like sort of like friends for the rest of your life till the day you die type thing. So it's been a real fun journey.
Fantastic.
Can I just say, Will, so you're part of this committee. So what does that involve? Is this a sort of a quite big commitment for you?
Yeah, no, it is quite a commitment. Fortunately, I had to. Fortunately, there was actually meant to be a meeting today, actually. But like I said, if it is you aren't able to meet them for a variety of reasons, you can just give them a heads up and stuff. Yeah. This is going to be a little bit of a surprise to them, actually, when I share with them this podcast. I'm sure they'll be a bit surprised. I told them I'm meeting my mum later, which is true. I will be meeting my mum afterwards, but like I said, it's podcast first. I suppose at the end of the day, all the Sport Association exists to do is to represent the views of the community that support the rugby club or the sports club, and also put on events and basically to strengthen ties between sort of the community and the club that they represent.
And you talked about events, Will. So obviously the weekend just gone by, you had the annual barbecue at the Cabbage Patch. How did that go?
Really good. We had I'd say about 150 people turned up, like members wise. We had on top of that around about 20 players from both the men and women's club. Big shout out there to Henry Cox, who is the head of the social engagement at Harlequins. He's very much a sort of like one-to-one, the guy that we speak to. Craig Harrison as well, who is a operations coordinator. He was there as well. And on top of that as well, we had a lovely Q&A from Laurie Dalrymple, the CEO of Harlequins. I mean, just to give a little bit of a heads up about Laurie, he's very much he's an absolute gem at Harlequins. We actually got him from Wolverhampton Wanderers, of all places. He was the CEO of a mid-table Premier League club. He's come here. He's really kind of helped things through. Obviously, when he joined us, we were losing about £5 million a year. I was just chatting to him actually before the event when we was waiting in queue, and he was mentioning about how essentially we're just, with this close breaking even, which in rugby is even possible. So, he's been doing some great stuff. It hasn't been easy. As like I said, someone who is a moderator on Harlequins Rugby Fans, my Facebook group, which now has just under 11,500 members. Like I said, people there are able to willingly and happily speak their mind. If there is a season ticket price, trust me, we're going to hear it. But it's no, it is, like I said, it's just all these different people you get to know and you get to meet, and it's just kind of what makes that sport and the club in general just extra special,
Well, being a moderator is quite hard, though, isn't it? Do you?
I mean, listen, it is, like I said, a lot of the people there, I mean, I could bring up the metrics if I wanted to, I could break it down. Obviously, a lot of the people on there, like, firstly, it's a Facebook group. So, I mean, maybe some of the people there are a little bit more sort of, I'm a millennial, so maybe that's moving a little bit more towards Gen X/Boomer. So maybe you could argue that there is a little bit of maturity there. I think some people might disagree, but no, it's like I said, there's a good group of people, and at the end of the day, I live by the sort of like saying that I think the most important thing that someone can have in their life is sort of like being able to express themselves freely, and as long as you're not out wanting or wishing sort of harm against someone, or you're not just going out there and just giving out sort of like ubiquitous hate, I think, you should be able to, as long as you're being civil, you should be able to debate and talk to people about it. And I think that's actually what it just comes down to. I'd call myself a bit firm and fair when those things happen.
Would you say rugby's actually quite a safe place, really, in many ways? Like you were saying about, your dad saying, football's not so family friendly, but would you say rugby as a community is a bit of a more friendly community?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I do feel, you can go to a rugby game, you can drink in the stands, guys can bring their kids, you can watch it, you can cheer it on, you can sit next to members of the opposition. However, I do sometimes feel that sort of like view of rugby actually does leave into a sort of sense of false security. At the end of the day, one of my close friends, or a group of people I'm very closely associated with, is Quins Pride, which is, as it currently stands, rugby's only LGBTQ advocacy group. Now, I know some people, like I said, some people like to get involved with culture wars and they like to talk about this and that. And I'm not going to spend my time talking about the actual intricacies of politics itself. But what I will say is this: I think it's not too much to ask that people from that community, which has been marginalised for many years, all they're asking for is just equality and just to get pointed out. And I think that's a very simple thing to do. But you do see it with some members of, tradition, some of the old guard. And I'll point them out, and I'll say it myself. There are some people who think, it's woke drivel, or it's this and that, blah, blah, blah. Oh, why are we waving flags about? And it's just like, it's things like that where actually, no, that doesn't help create a inviting atmosphere. And that is something that I think rugby does need to change. But like I said, I'm proud of my club. Harlequins are the only rugby club in the world, as it currently stands, a professional rugby club in the world that has that sort of link. And I think they are doing good work. And I think as well, they represent the vast majority of fans. They're very welcoming. There is, unfortunately, that little nascent minority that maybe speak louder than everyone else. But I think it's one of those ones where things are heading in the right direction. It's getting progressive. And it's working out well.
Well, that's good. I hope other clubs follow. I think that's brilliant.
Because I'm sure if you had Abby Barletta or Jack Dunk and Emily Hamilton on, they'd be able to speak to you a little bit more about that. They call me an ally. I'm happy to take that.
And I think it's really good, as a moderator yourself, then you can manage that as well. Because if you are a sports fan, then it's a shared collective experience, isn't it? And you all want to sort of celebrate in a safe environment, don't you? So, we're all sports fans, so everyone should feel safe expressing their views, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. And I think, if anything, when you think of rugby, there is obviously the idea that rugby is this upper class, tough sport. And don't get me wrong, there is definitely, that is entrenched. I grew up at Sutton Epsom, playing rugby there. A lot of the best kids are the ones who definitely were getting picked for Surrey. They were either at John Fisher or Whitgift. Look at John Fisher and Whitgift. You look at some of the players who've gone through there: Marlon Yard, Danny Cipriani. They are selective schools. They are definitely, you could say, like a private school. They got sponsorships. Maro Toje, the current Lions captain right now, got a scholarship at Harrow, one of the most expensive and prestigious schools in the country. So there is still that. But at the same time, I know so many people who are like me, working class, or people who've since in the last 10 years alone, where they've got more into rugby. And I just feel that actually this is something that rugby needs to embrace. And I think actually under Laurie Dalrymple, that's definitely what the club is doing. We are embracing people like that. That's the reason why it is important that it's only 2 matches a year, but we do have our pride game for the women's team, which is another thing as well. Women's rugby, I'm being so happy and proud that it is really just grown so exponentially in the last like 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, that's the reason why I made sure I got myself a ticket to the World Cup final this year in September at Twickenham, Allianz Stadium. So, like I said, there's so many great things. I think there's so much positivity and growth that's happening in it. And you're absolutely right there, Stu, that obviously it just shows that there are so many different types of people out there, and taking from what was originally a very elitist upper class sport and has grown. And I think definitely that's something that we need to keep going. I think things like, for example, keeping the Six Nations on terrestrial television, opening it up so that we're making sure that sort of states comprehensives, like my school I went to, I barely played rugby when I was at the state comprehensive. If it wasn't for my dad, who took me down to do rugby training every Sunday, I would not have any connection to the school. And I think these are the most important things that go to it.
I've not been following the negotiations. Is Six Nations staying on terrestrial, or is it going behind a paywall?
As far as I'm aware, yes. I think it is still is very
it's
much
on.
still...
I think they've signed a new deal for the next 2 or 3 years, haven't they?
Yeah. I think it's on a rolling contract every 2 to 3 years. Essentially, what's happened is that ITV are taking the brunt of it because they do have a little bit extra money. Because obviously they do have they do have an advertising service. It doesn't feel like government. There are some members of government who, especially in the Department of Culture, Media, and Sport, where they are like for it. It's a hard one. Listen, I'll point at Aaron now. You mentioned cricket earlier. I'm only just now at the age of 32 properly getting into cricket. And I think it was very much a detriment to the sport itself, where after 2005, when the Ashes win happened, where everyone talked about it, it got snapped up like that and got straight onto Sky Sports. And it's only now, and I'll tell you what it was, actually bringing out that 100-ball league, the 100. That's only through it now, like through the Oval Invincibles, which is technically my closest team.
That's been a game that has really gone out and innovated. You've had the 2020, you've got the
Exactly.
100. And it's almost those sort of formats are almost like the gateway drug, and then drag you into the test match. And I know rugby does that as well now. So it's about selling to different audiences, bringing kids in, bringing different parts of society into game. I wasn't a big rugby fan up to sort of 4 or 5 years ago till Jim brought me in. I sort of got disillusioned with football as well, and it feels like it does feel more of a sense of community.
I definitely see you with it. Listen, at the end of the day, football's always going to be king in this country. It always will be, and I get it. Just by the simplicity of the game, its accessibleness, just by people playing it, absolutely. And I get it, and especially the way that's where the money goes. Actually, there are potential for sports like rugby, cricket.
Yeah, and I also think you're right. When you're saying about the barriers as well. So it's been quite good with, recently with the cricket, they do like a highlights package now at 7 o'clock every night on BBC. So it's visible to people because, Sky Sports and TNT and so forth, by the time you have all those, it's quite expensive, isn't it? Not everyone can afford that. So it's about accessibility as well. And I think living in East Anglia, we haven't typically got a rugby team around here. We haven't typically got a cricket team around here. So football is the main sort of driver, isn't it? I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree, and I think definitely location comes down to it. And this is the reason why, actually, when you look at some of these like rugby mad towns like Bath or Exeter, they don't. It's very hard for let's take for example Exeter. Exeter's football club, I think they're called Exeter City, something like that. They've done, they'll never be able to compete against the Manchester Cities or the Arsenals or the Chelseas or whoever. But they have an opportunity through their rugby club, Exeter Chiefs, where they can actually, it's a bit more, they can focus on it, they can actually get into it. And it shows actually the community-wise, it means so much to them that when they had their golden years where they were like winning the European Cup, beating the likes of like Toulouse, Toulon or whoever, where they were like winning the Cup, especially as well, like I said, especially after some of the scandals that we should say that came out in the mid to late 2010s regarding a certain club that will be nameless. Like, so those sorts of things where actually they were then able to like prove themselves and like win it on their own. Like, these are the sorts of things which really people like, people who are on the outside, they just look at it as just like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a game. This team have scored these number of points, this and that. But to the actual community, it means the whole world. And I think especially as well, and I know this is about mental health, so I will bring it back to it. When I was stuck in COVID in first wave, and this is how I got involved through like the Facebook group, I was not doing very well. It really was a hard time for me. I was working in an industry, recruitment, which had been hit very badly by it. I was very lucky to even keep my job in the first place. And it was very much one of those things where I was living alone. I live in my dad, just to give an idea, I live at my dad's house, but my dad actually has his own residence that he lives at. So I lived here by myself. But it's times like these where, you really were lonely, and it really was, it hits your mental health. I've been very open about it myself, just to give a bit of a better idea that I've suffered from anxiety in the past. I have been through depressive bouts in my life. Not too long ago, actually, I was made redundant. And it was a really awful time in my life where I wasn't able to get really any job work, and I was very much by myself. And I can say this right now, if it wasn't for the support of my friends and family, and friends being people I've got to know through the rugby club over the last few years, I mean, I can honestly say I don't know if I'd be alive right now. And that's not for me saying I would have done something stupid. It's just like, you kind of feel like, people don't realize how important communication and just having other people in your life can really help make life so much better.
I think it's good, isn't it, having that way out. It is that stuff, because if you have like felt that unwell, it does feel like it feels like you don't remember how it feels to feel normal, or and it doesn't sort of just suddenly happen instantly, does it? You just suddenly look back over your shoulder and realize, oh, I think I feel better now. And then when you look back on it, I think it's quite good. You sort of realize what it was that actually helped you. So I guess this is what you reflected on and realized this is what pulled you out in many ways.
You're absolutely right. I think it's times like these where you really do kind of take stock about what's important in life. And I definitely think, one of the most important things is, there are some people who'd love to live like a hermit, love to live in a cabin in the woods by themselves. And don't go, we all get that feeling sometimes. There's feelings where you're like, I'm just so done with life. I just want to live by myself. No one bother me. But I feel for most people, it's, to have sort of your loved ones around you, to have that support, it's a really important thing. And I think definitely it's kind of be something that's unsaid. And as you said, sport is that great escape. When I'm watching Harlequins, I don't have to worry about sort of the targets I have to hit at work. I don't have to worry about, my finances, my bills, or this and that. I don't have to worry about, the future, for those like 2 hours or so, whatever it is, you're just kind of sat there just watching that. And you're right, it's a great release. It is just a great way to help.
I think, sorry, when you said, you're in the moment and watching the game and you're not thinking about, your mortgage and so on and so forth, you're actually practicing mindfulness, aren't you? In that moment, you're thinking about nothing else. It's like, the other day when I was watching the cricket, I was just like, oh, are they going to do it? Are India going to get the 20 runs, or England's going to get the wicket? And, I wasn't thinking about anything else, just about that in the moment. So, it's that in itself is really good for you as well, just to sort of like focus on something else away from your sort of everyday life. So, sorry, Shelley, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, because I was just thinking, how long does it take to get to that point? Because as someone who's not really big into sport, I know, and I was like listening to the interview with Michael earlier as well, and he was saying about taking someone new along who's never been into it before, but how he would not really be able to he'd be quiet and focusing on the game. I mean, I would be useless in that situation, because I'd be keeping like, what's happening? Why are they doing that? What's going on? So, like, how long does it sort of take, would you say, to get from that point where you don't have a clue what is going on to suddenly being absolutely gripped by every moment and it meaning so much to you?
I mean, how long's a piece of string? I hate to use that phrase, but it's true. I mean, for me, I was playing rugby from the age of 8 to 18. And I was kind of just playing along. I didn't mind it, this and that. And I went to a couple of Quins games and that. And it was only because I then went to university. I was in Portsmouth. And then that's where I missed my family. I missed this and that. And that's where it clicked. And obviously, Quins winning that year also helped. Some people, they may go to their first ever game and they get taken over by it, and it's their life and soul of the party for the rest of their lives. It's it's their number one priority. Some people, maybe they might be, there's some people I know who've been watching rugby on off for many years. No, it's all right. They like it, but it's not really something. You never know. Maybe a couple of years down the line, though, they will look back at it and think, oh, they'll have an opportunity like me where they've just realised, oh, actually, it hits for you.
I've never been to like a big match though, so I don't know what it must be like to be with all the atmosphere and in the crowd. And
it makes a big difference for me, because my journey into it was a bit different. So when I was young, being that bit older than Will, he had the old Five Nations tournament. So my dad, big English rugby fan, and our neighbour was as they all are, a proud Welshman. So when England Wales were on, Gareth would come around from next door, and the noise from both of them was quite immense. And as a child, I absolutely hated it. I just didn't want to know. But eventually you get to that point of becoming interested in what the fuss is about. And then I started watching, and it didn't take very long in the company of people who were that passionate about it to start to get into it and start to get gripped by it. But there's nothing actually quite like being there and being there with your mates, because then it's about so much more than just the game.
I think Shelley, it's just a case you've got to try it and see.
I was going to say, do you think rugby is what's missing from my life?
Not necessarily, but
I thought it might be money. It might be money.
Jump in and have a look.
I mean, look, you will have less money if you start going to the rugby, but you'll have a lot of fun. And that's, I think, the important thing. Will, one final question, if we may.
Of course.
Let's imagine you've got a sports fan, but let's imagine they've supported a football team, and they supported Norwich City for a chunk of their life. They've been a season ticket holder and all that. Now, you possibly know football well enough to know Norwich City have been traditionally not massively successful. A success for us looks like getting into the Premiership and maybe just about hanging on in there for a season or two. And then suddenly they decide that they're going to be an Arsenal fan instead. What's your thoughts on that, Will?
I mean, just for people who can't see, Will just rolled his eyes there.
He did roll his eyes, which I think is a fair response. But, I don't want to be leading here.
Yes, I'm not one of these...
Given Stu decided to do this...
I think he gagged.
No, I didn't gag. Listen, I have a lot of Arsenal friends.
Not Arsenal, although I could have hoped he might have picked a more successful team, but nonetheless...
That's a very good question, Jim. That's a good question. I think when it comes to sort of like, glory hunters or plastic fans or stuff along the lines of that and everything, I am very well. My Arsenal friends all tell me quite emotionally about how things have been going for Arsenal over the last 20 years or so.
I think Will, just to give it some context, my brother-in-law's a season ticket holder at Arsenal.
Okay.
He just took me to one of the games, and that particular season I just started looking out for their results and following them, and because he liked them, so again, it's that thing where you just bond, isn't it, over
whatever. Well, I mean, I asked Michael the same question earlier, so let's listen to his response.
I mean, you fall in love with things for a reason, right? You fall in love with teams for a reason. It's because it's where you're from, or it might be a certain player, whatever it may be. But the journey to what is success for your team, if it's that much harder, if it's that much longer, if it's that much more painful, if it's that much more, desperate and dark and depressing and filled with sleepless nights, long journeys, resentment, bitterness, tears, when you actually get there, it's better than anything you could ever experience, especially if you go along that journey with people that you love and care about, all fighting the same battle. It's you can't ever take those European nights with me, my dad, and my brother away from me. You can't ever take that 2021 Premiership title with Quins away from me. You can't cut corners on what it means to support your teams. You can't find that totally unfathomable thing that you can't ever lose because you love it so much. And when it takes you to where you want to be, it's absolutely Elysium with your best mates, with your family. It's unbelievable.
So there we go. Will, anything to add to that?
I mean, everyone looks at sports clubs differently depending on their their upbringing or the nature of what they've lived in. Like, here's a good example. Actually, I didn't realise this till about last summer, but my great granddad, who was also called Will Humphreys, he was actually a proper Cockney geezer. He was born and stuff. I didn't find out till last year. The guy was a diehard Tottenham Hotspur fan. Now, I've never really had any sort of interest in sort of like Tottenham Hotspur. Like I said, rugby's my first love. I support Watford. Watford, I will make this abundantly clear, is not a North London club. It's a town north of North London. I hate it even when other Watford fans try to claim we're North London. We're not North London. So that's kind of my only, like I said, my only sort of like allegiance really has been sort of like Watford, or maybe because I grew up in southwest London. I wasn't too upset if I saw Chelsea do well, because 99% of my friends growing up were Chelsea fans. But then I found out last year that my great-granddad, a guy who I'm named after, who lost his leg fighting against the Ottomans in the Holy Land in 1917, someone who died 30 years before I even knew him, but my dad had such happy memories of this and that, was a Spurs boy, a diehard Spurs boy. So what then happened was that my friend Ryan Gosnell, who's a big Spurs fan, for Christmas, we did this almost little swap shirt for Christmas, just gone. He bought me a Tottenham shirt, which had Richarlison on the back, because Richarlison obviously played for Watford before he went over there. And I got him a Harlequin shirt, because I was trying to get him into Harlequins, with Joe Marler on the back. And whilst I will still say that Watford are my football club, along with that as well, Portsmouth Football Club, because I went to University of Portsmouth for 4 years, I do have a soft spot now for Spurs. Sorry, Stu, don't try and kill me, because I have that association now with them through family. And also my friend Ryan bought me this show. We basically spent the exact money each, £90. Not a lot of, a lot of money, especially in the cost of living crisis. But the fact is he went out there, he got me it. I did the same thing for him as well. When Tottenham won the Europa League this year, I was generally very happy for them. And I was actually generally, just quite pumped. I watched it. I wore my shirt. I saw my friend afterwards. 17 years since they last won a trophy. 42 since a European Cup. It meant something. And you know what? It's stuff like that where actually, if you do decide that you start to get an affinity towards a certain club, whatever it is, maybe it's better if it isn't because they're the top of the league and they're always winning stuff. But
the thing is, Will, that particular season, they were running neck and neck and Man City, and they ended up finished second, so I felt a bit cheated. At least the club you went to won something.
So it was a glory hunting move from you. I think you've just come.
I'm the glory hunter here, boys. Yeah, I'm actually like.
Your other club, Chelsea, is now the world club champion as well. So you've had a great season, you have.
Listen, I think definitely we can get into it, but at the end of the day, you just got to remember when it comes to these sports, it's just a game at the end of the day.
Just enjoy it.
Exactly, just enjoy it. And I think, don't take things too seriously in that sense, because there's lots of serious stuff happening in this world right now. So I think what I'm going to say is this, is that, you can support whoever you want to support. If you do have a genuine connection to them, if it is something that you help it out, like I say, my friend Ryan is a very close friend of me, and it's because just to see how happy he was, because it meant the world to him. It meant the absolute world to him to see them win that trophy. And the fact is he went out of his way, bought me that shirt. There will be an affinity there that I'll probably have for, and also the fact it was my great granddad's club. There's an affinity there I have now for that club, which may last with me for the rest of life. Doesn't mean I'm an out and out supporter, or I'm going to start, come on, you Spurs, this and that. Like I said, rugby will always be my first love because that's something I just grew up with that. But definitely, these are, I think that's the great. Going back to what we said at the beginning, that's the great thing about sport. That it has such a diverse group of people there. There's so many different people who can all find commonality, common ground. And it helps, especially in the day with mental health. So that's my view on it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Will. So I think time-wise, that's pretty much us done for this time. So what have we learned this week? I suppose the big takeaway is if you don't already, you should support Harlequins. If that's not for you, for whatever reason, then find your community, find your thing, because it's great for your health, great for your mental health, great way to make new friends, and a great way to practice mindfulness and have a damn good time while you're about it. We'll return to our more normal good news stories next week. Will, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Jim, Sue, Shirley, thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed this, and I just want to say when you are ready to release this episode, please make sure to let me know. I will make sure this is posted and pinned to the top of our group so people know this, because I think everyone can learn something from it. Honestly, next time you guys are ever in Twickenham, if you're visiting game, let me know. Drinks are on me. First round at the Cabbage Patch. I'll show you around the QUINSSA stand, show you around some of the people. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this, guys.
Thanks,
Well,
Jim.
I'll see you
Thanks,
at
Shirley.
the rugby, definitely.
Definitely, Shirley. Looking forward to it.
And we will be hitting the Cabbage Patch very, very soon. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we will see you. Well, we won't see you, but you'll hear us next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us about how your community or your interest has helped support you through good times and bad, or if you want to talk rugby and Quins with us, then please drop us a comment on Facebook or Insta or YouTube. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please give us a like or a share or a subscribe. In the words of Porky Pig, that's all, folks. Until next time, remember, everything's fine.